Hey friends, it's Baron with today's feed run. So I just picked up the feed, and so we are ready to head home. So let me get out of this parking lot and we will start our conversation. Today we are going to talk about what I'm considering the biggest problem with all of the chaos that's happening right now. You've probably seen the people, you probably have your friends that are debating this gun violence thing, and over the weekend, we just had the March for Our Lives thing throughout DC and all the other countries and cities. So this isn't going to be necessarily about gun control or a gun debate. This is going to be what I think is the root of the problem. And my honest belief is the root of the problem is really stemming from rural versus urban. The city folks versus the country folks. And sometimes it's not even necessarily just that simple. It's more of maybe just a mindset of city versus country. So I've came to this realization after watching a bunch of people on Facebook and a bunch of my friends that live in the city and a bunch of my friends that's never really spent any time living in the country. Maybe they visited. So let's give a quick little background of why I think my opinion is worthy of you listening to. So I grew up in the inner city. I lived most of the 80s in the inner city, and then in the early 90s I moved to the suburbs. Lived my middle school, high school years in the suburbs. College, I lived from a variety of middle of nowhere when I went to a very rural, middle of the nowhere college, and I also lived in really big city college towns as well. And then as an adult in my 20s, I chose to move out to the rural mountains, and that's where I live right now, very rural area. Like a good example is the feed store. This video is me driving to the feed store and driving home. So that's about one trip into town. So that's about how long it takes me to get into town to the nearest grocery store, which is where the feed store is and everything else that's what you're used to as society. So most of my friends, some of them actually live in New York City. They live in the city, so they're really city folks. And in understanding why they don't see the need for an AR-15 or a semi-assault rifle or even handguns in some means is because you've got all of the public services. You have the police force. You have private protection. Some buildings have security. There's lots of people with guns around. Here in the country, it's just you. I can tell you stories where we've had to call the police for a break-in at a neighbor's house, and the police, in a nutshell, pretty much said they weren't going to make it till tomorrow and have us deal with it ourselves, which they then explained to us a couple steps to take with dealing with it ourselves. We also have community meetings to talk about this kind of stuff, because us and some communities around, we have conversations about what to do. We have a phone tree to deal with bad things happening, because we know that it's the police, if they are going to come, it's going to take them a very long time to make it to us because of how far we are out. So the stuff that we've dealt with. So having a weapon for home defense is important. And each person, that can be based on your skill set and what you feel is most needed for your home defense in the country. And home defense might not even be against necessarily bad people or the government, but it also could be farm defense, because there's a crazy rabid animal on your property attacking your animals or running the risk of giving your animals diseases, and you have to deal with it yourself. And so you might need a firearm, or you probably do need a firearm to deal with that. Then there's also the mindset that in the city, you're kind of domesticated, you're taken care of. There's a lot given to you when you live in a city. Like, you have easy access to grocery stores, you have easy access to food, water, sewage, everything is pretty much dealt with by someone else. You're paying for someone to deal with it, for someone else to deal with it. In a very rural setting, you're dealing it with yourself. Like, for example, I'm getting ready to build a composting toilet, so that part of our offset is not only can I show people how you can build composting toilets yourself, but how even your waste management you can directly deal with yourself. So that is completely a different mindset. Some of these people that live in the city still have this country mindset. Maybe they live in the city because they felt like they needed to get a job, and that was their only opportunity to get a job. Some people, maybe they grew up on the farm and they now choose that they like all of the creature comforts of living in the city, so they go and get domesticated themselves. They're making that choice. But they're still part of the country mindset that they can't take away from their mind yet. So that's all probable when it comes to the reason why some people are very pro and very anti-guns. And then there's the people that are the NPCs. And this is, for those that don't understand what an NPC is, it stands for non-playable character. Some people will use the term zombie. Some people will use the term sheep. Excuse me. I like non-playable character because you're pre-programmed. So a non-playable character is usually someone that's gone to government schools. You watch local media, and you just follow what you think it is to be a productive, good citizen. And that's okay. But the reason I like not to call them an NPC instead of anything of these other derogatory comments is, if you've played video games, from time to time, non-playable characters become playable characters that you then get to manipulate and control. And so they're no longer just following their programming. You or something else gets to take control over that. And that's why I say there's still hope for some of these non-NPCs, is some of these people life could change, and now they have 100% control of their life, and they just go against their pre-programming. But some people just want to be NPCs. They like going to work to get money, to buy the things that they need to then go to work, and they don't mind what I view as a vicious cycle. They don't mind that cycle. They find comfort in the routine. I am not one of those people by any means at all. I tolerate routine and understand that routine is in some ways an effective way to get things done, but in general I am not a fan of things that are regular and routine. I purposely even try to drive different ways to when I'm going out and about, just to shake things up. So how do we solve this? We solve this in probably the only way that I can possibly see how to solve this, and this is to go back to states, local, cities. They're the ones that are going to have to make up their rules and their laws based on what their citizens demand. It might be ideal for certain guns to not be allowed in certain city settings. But just having an overall general sweeping of the entire country, that's ignorant at best and criminal at worst. And the reason I say criminal at worst is because you start criminalizing people that own those guns for reasons that you currently can't understand because you've not walked and lived in their lifestyle. So banning a gun that someone is very proficient at using and maybe is a safer gun for them to use because of their experience and their environment, and making them now criminals for owning that gun, that's where I say you making a decision for someone else is very criminal. I also think that we just don't understand enough about guns, and I think there needs to be a firm understanding. I believe that we need to bring back all types of rural training. We need to teach people how to grow their food again. We need to teach people how to shoot guns. We need people how to raise animals. Even if they choose to never do that, having those skills, learning those skill sets means that you now understand the industries that you're talking about a little bit better. You understand the country life. You understand why people might choose to live in a rural setting. And so you're not going to be so quick to just restrict their rights and to tell them that they're ignorant, backwards, dumb. There might be parts that you can just really, by learning skills, learning agrarian skills, you can have a better understanding of why certain rights are important to certain types of people. So really, I mean, the conversation has to get down to local. It's going back to what you've heard me say before, and if you followed me on Facebook and you followed me when it comes to me just getting hyperbolic and just being crazy about things, the truth be told is we need a small, localized government because every particular region is so distinctly different. I mean, look at the election between Trump and Hillary. Forget all aspects of the individual people. You will clearly see that it's a city versus rural type of mindset. Now, I'm still not sure how people in the city and people in the country, they both voted for people that pretty much lived in New York City and are really not in touch with the rest of the world. That's where sometimes the presidency makes no sense to me, that we have one president that oversees people from all these different walks of life. But so be it, that's how our current system is set up. But I'm a libertarian, or very close to a libertarian, and I would also say that I'm very close to, I believe in a Jeffersonian type of government. So mix that with a libertarian and a very strong localist view, and that's about where I fall. I think that we need to have a really strong local government for the people to make the rules. We need a okay county, okay state, and a very weak federal. The federal government is simply there just to make sure that nothing horrible is happening in individual states, and that as a unified country we can make distinct choices that we really just need to make, because sometimes city borders, county borders, state borders don't protect something or don't represent enough. So that's where my particular view is, first and foremost, is that this isn't a gun issue. This isn't a hate the neighbor issue. This isn't even a Democrat, Republican, and NRA versus non-NRA issue. It is a rural versus country. It is simply a local issue that we need to focus more on localism, strong local communities, making sure that you're living in a community, you're living in an area that best supports you. I don't understand people that want to live in a giant building that's got 250 people and you're never going to know your neighbor, because I live in a community right now of about 250 people and I pretty much know everybody's name. I want to say I know most people's birthdays, and I know what most people either did or do for a living. And we have meetings and we talk, and those that choose not to participate, that's cool. They can just weed themselves out. But in general, most of us want to know what's going on, and I think that that's important. I think that's exciting too. And people that are choosing to live in an apartment building where you don't get to know that kind of stuff, that's weird to me. And like when I grew up in the suburbs, the same thing happened in the suburbs. Really, the community in the suburbs was the kids. All of us kids played together, we worked together, we did stuff together. Sometimes our parents would interact, but most of the time our parents didn't really do things with other parents unless the kids were involved. So I think a problem is we're just we're separating ourselves out from these different groups, and we're not building strong community anymore. We are filling that gap in with TV, government, and just things that aren't necessarily going to benefit society in general. While I'm a fan of tribalism, a lot of people, you're going to hear a lot of bad words, that tribalism promotes racism, it promotes lots of bad things. I actually also think tribalism promotes closeness and community. Yes, you're going to have people that abuse it, that are going to pick their favorite people because maybe they're all the same skin color, or maybe they're all the same religion. But then you're also going to get people that join forces together because we're all on the same chunk of land. We all have the same weather pattern. We all live within the same boundaries. And that will that's larger than skin color, religion, things of that sort. Because when you're part of a strong community, you don't really care that much about what faith that your neighbor has. You're more worried about, how is this going to interact with the community? How is this weather pattern going to benefit us? How is this chunk of land that we all are sharing? How can we work together to make something more profitable? And that's really the basis of what it's down to. And when you're in a city and you don't really have a chunk of land and you don't really have anything to really stand behind, maybe the building that you're in, I don't know. I've not been in the a city situation where we were just like a building. When I lived in the inner city, it was still like a little neighborhood, and each, the city block, our street, our block was where our unity was there. And again, it was mostly kids, but there were still parents that still interacted, so it's a little bit different in the suburbs. The city was a little bit more closer knit, surprisingly, than the suburbs. But what I'm hearing from my friends is the city's not as close knit as it used to be. You might recognize your Starbucks coffee server, but you don't know them. You don't know where they go to school. You don't know if they have kids. You don't know what they do outside of that. You don't run into them at the local grocer, which here in the rural area, you do. Like my feed lady, I know her outside of just buying feed. I've ran into her at the grocery store, ran into her at the hardware store. It's, you learn more about their lives. They become more real people to you, and so then you genuinely care about their well-being. And that's what's pretty awesome. I right now, I'm pretty happy with where I live. My goal is, my next step is to get a smaller community, more tight-knit, more unifying. And I've been looking at some places, some rural places in the mountains of West Virginia and Virginia to see where's going to be the best place to do that. Because with my nonprofit and with the Mavis Institute, not only I want to teach you sustainable skills, and I want to teach you how to live off the land, I want to teach you how to grow food, I want to teach you how to do that kind of stuff. I also want to teach you how to community build, and I want to teach you how to find like-minded people and join forces with like-minded people so that we can start rebuilding the country from the ground up. So we can rebuild our society. All the stuff that you don't like about current society, we can make it better. And that's my goal. And yeah, I might do that sometimes with a sledgehammer and just bang it really loud just to get people all riled up. And sometimes I might do it by just, proper education. I do a lot of different tactics. I'm not perfect. Some are fun. I like being a shitlord. I admit it. It's fun on the internet. I like getting people stirred up. I like getting the emotions drawn out there. I like seeing people in the raw, and I like to know where they're coming from, because once you got someone down to their basic building blocks, you then can help reconstruct them in ways that they want to grow and learn. But you got to know where their basic building blocks are first. And I think currently getting people riled up and emotionally driven is the best way to do that. And also just by saying no. Sometimes I just want to say no to things. I don't agree with you, no. I think we need to make a new law, no. I think we need to protest this, no. I think we need to sit back, think about it. What's the impact? How is this going to help you, your community, the world? And then, after you've said no enough times and you've thought about it, then you can figure out a master plan and make awesomeness. So, that's a little off the subject a little bit, but I still think it's really based on the community. And I really think it's based on rural versus urban, because in the rural setting, especially if you raise animals, you've got to make lots of decisions. You've got life and death in your hand every single day with raising animals, hatching animals, having to figure out if you have to put something down because it's sick, it's dying. It's just how the rural setting is, and it reconnects you back to all the stuff that I think's important in life and that we often seem to overlook and forget. Well, guys, I am pulling into the farm, so thank you for listening to me again today. I'm going to try to get back on doing more of these. We just had lots of crazy weather and just lots of craziness, and so I overlooked and was just too busy to make some of these feed runs and even my morning mountain chat. But I plan on, now that the weather's getting better and I'm going to do walks and things of that sort, I plan on getting back and doing this kind of stuff. But definitely check out our Facebook page. You're probably watching that on this, but the Mavis Pharmacy is the Facebook page that you need to be watching. And we're going to be posting videos, some of the great, exciting, fun things that we'll be doing later this year. Like, we're going to be building a GSAP toilet, and I'm going to be offering some more classes. And we're going to really be expanding, because next year I plan on doing a whole lot of awesomeness. So this year is definitely the major prep year. Well, anyways, guys, thank you for listening to the feed run. Agree with me, disagree with me. Either way, I'd like to hear what you got to say. So I need to get this feed to the chickens. So you guys have yourself a wonderful rest of the day. Till next time, adios.